highly educated, highly unemployable. And let me tell you, it really threw us for a loop. For the longest time, we've all been told that more education equals better job security, right?
Right.
But this article is suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the ground is shifting beneath our feet.
Yeah. It's a real head scratcher. I mean, for decades, technology has consistently favored those with higher education. Those degrees were like golden tickets to job security and high wages, especially as tech became more and more important.
Exactly. But this article is throwing some serious shade on that idea. Highlighted some pretty unexpected struggles.
Yeah.
That highly educated professionals are running into these days. So did you know that people with advanced degrees are now taking longer to find jobs than those without college degrees?
Yeah, it's a pretty stark reversal. The article mentions that the median job search time for those with master's or doctoral degrees has ballooned to 18 weeks. To put that in perspective, that's more than 4 times longer than it was just 2 years ago.
4 times longer. Wow, that's mind-blowing. I mean, you'd think with all that education, they'd be snapping up jobs left and right.
You would think right. But the article dives into a few reasons why this might be happening. One of the most compelling arguments is that technology, which once favored the highly educated, might be starting to benefit lower-skilled workers more.
Hold up. Are you saying technology is now helping those without advanced degrees more than those with them? How did that even work?
Well, think about it this way. A lot of tasks that used to require specialized knowledge can now be done by AI or automated systems. For example, imagine AI handling data entry, freeing up administrative assistants to take on more complex project management tasks.
Okay, that makes sense. So instead of replacing jobs outright, AI is kind of changing the nature of the work. But how does that explain why people with master's degrees are having such a hard time finding jobs?
Well, the article uses the term white-collar recession to describe what's happening. It argues that as technology automates or simplifies certain white-collar tasks, companies are realizing they don't necessarily need to hire someone with a PhD to get the job done. They can either hire someone with less education for less money, or use technology to fill the gap altogether.
So it's almost like the skills that were once so valuable are becoming less valuable.
Exactly. And the article points to a few other factors that are contributing to this shift. The rise of remote work, for example, has allowed companies to hire globally for cheaper, increasing competition for U.S.-based knowledge workers.
Yeah, that makes sense. If a company can find someone with similar skills in another country who's willing to work for less, why wouldn't they? But that's got to be tough on folks here who are suddenly facing a global talent pool.
Absolutely. And then there's the rise of skills-based hiring. Employers are increasingly prioritizing actual skills and experience over formal credentials. So that fancy degree might not open as many doors as it used to if you can't demonstrate that you can actually put that knowledge to work.
So it's not just what you know, it's what you can do with that knowledge. It's about proving you've got the skills to back up that diploma. This is starting to feel like a major shakeup in the job market.
It is. And to really drive home the potential impact of this shift, the article highlights the story of Ron Slater, a military veteran with a master's degree who has been unemployed for over 2 years, despite applying to thousands of jobs.
2 years? Seriously, you think after serving our country and earning a master's degree, the job market would be rolling out the red carpet?
You'd think so, right? But his experience unfortunately reflects a growing trend. It's a real wake-up call for those who assume that a higher education would guarantee job security.
That's heartbreaking. His story in this whole white-collar recession thing paints a pretty bleak picture.
It does. And to understand why this might be happening now, the article points to a parallel with what happened to manufacturing workers in the early 2000s with globalization.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Back then, it was all about outsourcing manufacturing jobs to countries with lower labor costs. Is that what's happening now with knowledge work?
That's exactly the comparison the article makes. Just as globalization led to a major moment of dislocation for manufacturing workers, technology and remote work are creating a similar situation for knowledge workers.
So were you saying that what happened to blue-collar workers then is happening to white-collar workers now?
That's the argument. And the article uses some pretty relatable examples to illustrate this point.
I'm all ears. Give me the details.
Remember Tara from the article, the Cornell MBA graduate who got laid off from Amazon? She's been unemployed for over a year despite sending out hundreds of applications.
Yeah, her story really stuck with me. I mean, a Cornell MBA. You'd think she'd be a shoo-in for any job. Makes you wonder if all that time and money spent on education was really worth it.
Right. And then you have people like Scott Cady, who's actually hiding his PhD on his resume. Or Michael Borsellino, who changed his degree to social sciences to sound more broadly applicable.
Wow, they're downplaying their qualifications just to get a foot in the door. That's kind of wild, isn't it? It's almost like having a higher degree is working against them in some cases.
That's the irony, isn't it? And the article talks about the potential psychological impact of all this. We're talking about people's livelihoods, their dreams, their sense of self-worth. Long-term unemployment can have a real scarring effect, not just on individuals, but on the economy as a whole.
Which is like this domino effect.
Right.
One thing leads to another. And it can be really tough to break out of that cycle. It's a lot to process, honestly. I mean, is this really happening? Are we all doomed?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. The article does point out that most people with advanced degrees are still doing pretty well. But this trend, this potential shift, is definitely something to pay attention to. It raises a really important question. Is this just a temporary blip caused by the pandemic and the recent economic upheaval, or is it a sign of a more fundamental long-term change?
Okay, so maybe not total doom and gloom, but definitely a wake-up call. So if this trend does continue, what does it mean for the rest of us? What does it mean for someone listening to this right now who's thinking about going back to school or just starting out their career?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And while there are no easy answers, the article does offer some insights that might be helpful for those navigating this new reality.
Okay, I'm all ears. Lay it on me.
Well, first and foremost, the article emphasizes the importance of developing in-demand skills. It's not just about having a degree anymore. It's about having the right skills, the ones that are relevant to the jobs of tomorrow.
So it's not about the piece of paper. It's about what you can actually do. It makes sense, especially with technology changing so rapidly.
Exactly. And this might mean going beyond traditional degrees and seeking out specialized training certifications or even online courses in fields that are less susceptible to automation. The article highlights areas like data science, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and renewable energy as potential growth areas.
So they're all hot fields right now. So if you're thinking about going back to school, maybe those are some areas to explore. But what about people who are already in the workforce? What can they do to adapt to this changing landscape?
That's where the concept of lifelong learning comes in. The job market is evolving faster than ever, so the ability to learn new skills quickly and pivot to new opportunities will be essential.
Lifelong learning, I hear that phrase a lot, but honestly, with work, family, and everything else going on, how can people realistically find the time and resources for all that learning?
That's a valid point. And something we all struggle with. It might mean taking online courses during your commute, attending industry conferences, or even just setting aside 30 minutes a day to read industry publications, or listen to podcasts like this one.
That's a great plug. See, you're learning something new already. But seriously, making time for continuous learning, even if it's just small chunks here and there, can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And it's not just about formal learning either. It's about being curious, staying informed, and constantly seeking out new information and experiences.
So it's like a mindset shift. Always be learning, always be growing. I like that. What else does the article suggest?
Well, it also stresses the importance of networking and building relationships. While the article talked about skills-based hiring, it's often who you know that gets your foot in the door.
Networking. It always sounds so strategic and calculated. How do you recommend actually building those relationships in a way that feels authentic?
That's a great question. I think it starts with being genuinely interested in other people and what they do. Attend industry events. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. Or even just strike up conversations with colleagues or acquaintances who work in fields that interest you. You never know where those connections might lead.
So it's not just about handing out business cards. It's about making real connections and building genuine relationships.
Exactly. And when you do that, opportunities tend to present themselves more organically.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've got lifelong learning, we've got networking. Anything else?
The article also touched on the potential downsides of specialization. While being an expert in a niche area can be valuable, it can also make you more vulnerable to obsolescence if that area becomes automated or less in demand.
So don't put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. What's the alternative?
Developing a broader skill set and having diverse interests can be beneficial. Think of it like diversifying your investments. It helps you weather economic storms.
Okay, I like that analogy. It's about building a portfolio of skills, not just relying on one or two.
Exactly. And finally, the article emphasizes something that I think is often overlooked: the importance of soft skills.
Oh, you mean like communication, teamwork, problem solving, that kind of thing?
Exactly. Those skills are becoming even more valuable in a world where technology is automating so many tasks.
It's funny, we're talking about all this technology, AI taking over jobs.
Yeah.
But it's those human skills, the ones that machines can't replicate, that are becoming even more important.
It's a paradox, isn't it? As technology advances, those human qualities, empathy, creativity, critical thinking, become the things that set us apart. They're what make us truly indispensable.
It's almost like we're coming full circle. For so long, the focus has been on technical skills, STEM education. But now we're realizing that those human qualities, those soft skills, are just as important, if not more so.
I completely agree. And while the article highlights the challenges we're facing, I think it also offers a sense of hope.
Hope? How so?
Well, it reminds us that we have the power to adapt, learn, and evolve. We can embrace these challenges and come out stronger on the other side. It's about being proactive, taking control of our own futures, and realizing that the future of work is not something that happens to us, it's something we create.
I love that. So it's not about being afraid of the future, it's about shaping it. But with all this talk about adaptability and lifelong learning, it's hard not to feel a bit overwhelmed. Where do we even begin?
That's a fair point. I think it starts with being honest with ourselves about our strengths, weaknesses, and aspirations. What are we good at? What do we enjoy doing? What skills do we need to develop to stay relevant in this changing world?
So it's like taking inventory of our skills and then figuring out how to fill in the gaps. But what about the bigger picture? What does this all mean for the future of work in general? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What does this all mean for the future of work? This whole conversation has really highlighted how the job market is in flux, and that education might not be the guaranteed path to success it once was. It's a bit unsettling to think about.
It is unsettling, but I think it's also an exciting time to be alive. We're on the cusp of a major transformation in how we work, learn, and live. The old rules are being rewritten, and we have the opportunity to shape what the future looks like.
I like that. Shaping the future instead of being afraid of it. But how do we even begin to wrap our heads around such a massive shift? I mean, are we talking about a future where everyone needs to be a coder or a data scientist?
Not necessarily. While technical skills will definitely be important, I think the future of work will be less about specific job titles and more about adaptability, problem solving, and creativity. It's about being able to learn new things quickly, think critically, and collaborate effectively with others.
So it's less about what you know now and more about your ability to learn and adapt as things change. It's about having a growth mindset.
Exactly. And that's where education systems need to evolve as well. We need to move beyond the traditional model of front-loading education into the first 2 decades of life and embrace a model of continuous learning throughout our careers.
I've heard this idea of micro-credentials or nano degrees popping up more and more. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Absolutely. These shorter, more focused programs allow people to upskill or reskill quickly. Without having to commit to a full-blown degree program, it allows people to stay ahead of the curve and tailor their education to the specific demands of the job market.
It's like a more agile approach to education.
Yeah.
Adapted and evolving as needed.
Yeah.
But even with these new models of learning, it's still hard to shake this feeling that AI is this looming threat that's going to steal all our jobs.
I understand that fear, but I think it's important to remember that AI is a tool. It's how we choose to use it that will determine its impact on our lives and our work. Instead of viewing it as a job killer, we can choose to see it as a job creator, a tool that can enhance our skills and create new opportunities.
So it's not about humans versus machines. It's about humans and machines working together. We need to figure out how to leverage AI to our advantage.
Precisely. Think about it this way. AI can automate routine tasks, freeing up humans to focus on more creative, strategic, and interpersonal work. It can help us analyze vast amounts of data, identify patterns, and make better decisions. It can even personalize learning experiences, making education more accessible and effective.
I'm starting to see the possibilities here. It's not about being replaced by AI. It's about using AI to augment our abilities and create a more fulfilling and productive future of work.
Exactly. And that's why I think this is such an exciting time. We're not just passive observers in this technological revolution. We're active participants. We have the power to shape how AI is developed, how it's used, and how it impacts our lives.
It's empowering, isn't it? We're not just at the mercy of technology. We have agency. We can choose to embrace the possibilities and create a future where work is more meaningful, more rewarding, and more aligned with our human potential.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And that's what I hope people take away from this conversation. A sense of possibility, a sense of empowerment. The future of work is not predetermined. It's something we're creating together right now.
This has been a fascinating deep dive, and it's definitely given me a lot to think about. We started off talking about this article, highly educated, highly unemployable, which painted a somewhat bleak picture of the job market. But I was feeling a bit more optimistic after this conversation.
Me too. I think there's a lot to be hopeful about. We have the tools, the technology, and the human ingenuity to create a future of work that's both prosperous and fulfilling.
So to wrap things up, here's what we've learned today. The value of education is evolving. AI is changing the game. Adaptability is key. And lifelong learning is essential. But here's the big question I want to leave you with, dear listener. What steps can you take today to prepare for the future of work? What skills can you develop? What connections can you make? What actions can you take to ensure that you're not just surviving, but thriving in this new world of work? Think about it, explore it, embrace the challenge, because the future is in your hands.